Hey, welcome to Gray Roots Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Alicia Warnicki, and today we are exploring a hot topic that is near and dear to my heart, in-laws. We are going to get real about navigating and cultivating relationships with in-laws. Now, that is a super broad category. You've got mother-in-laws, father-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, sons and daughters-in-law. Always mess that up. Sons-in-law. You potentially have brother and sisters-in-law. All of that mixed in. That's not even if you have a blended family. That is just what comes if two families with siblings decide to get married and start their own little party. I mean, that's always what it is at my house, right? We're like, oh, we're gonna have a party. So I think the In Law Diaries, kind of one of the things that makes this so close to my heart is because I don't have any daughters. The old saying of a daughter is a daughter for the rest of your life, a son is a son until he finds a wife. There's some truth to that. And I will forever be a mother-in-law or a mom to boys. So it's super important to me that relationship is built and stays intact for me, not only so that I can still be connected to my son, but also, I love my daughter-in-laws. They are kind of like my daughters, but not because I didn't raise them. So I want to keep that relationship intact with them. Want to just start off with a little story about how I was introduced to not how I was introduced to my in-laws, but, there's all this chaos around the mother-in-laws and the daughter-in-laws, the whole in-law thing. And my father-in-law and mother-in-law, when I was in high school, some of y'all know my story. I got pregnant in high school. And so my husband, Jeff, and I, we had to go tell our parents. And when we got to his house, we shared with them that I was pregnant and we were going to have a baby. We were super young. We were 17 and 19 at the time. And my in-laws handled that like champs. And I just wanted to give a shout out to that. Like if I could be like them, that is kind of my goal. His mom, of course, was in shock. His dad came up around us and he stood up and gave us both a big bear hug and said, "Hey, well, congratulations. We're going to get through this. Let's sit down and talk about it." I thought it blew my mind because my mother's reaction was on the opposite end of the pole. She had a lot of emotion going on with that. And so that was really difficult for her. But that is kind of my in-law goal. If I can be like that, where I can just bring my arms around my daughters-in-law and say, here's what we got. Like, hey, this might not be what I expected it to be, but let's sit down and talk about it.
Hey, can I interrupt and tell you what I love about that story that you're not even recognizing is I love that you and Jeff went and told them. I think so many times with the in-laws, the girls make the sons go do the dirty work with the mother-in-law and they don't show up, furthering kind of dividing. Right. But I love that you're like, we're doing this together. Because that is so good for the relationship with the in-law, but also for you and your partner to be in it together, because often we try to make you be the bad guy and you go tell them it's your parents, or you be the bad guy and you go tell. And I think that it's great that y'all do it together. So I really admired that at 17, Alicia, you had that hard conversation with his parents. That's impressive.
Yeah. Now they may have gone after we left and talked behind closed doors and, cried and threw fits and whatever, because it was
and they probably did.
Yeah. But to me, that felt so welcoming and so accepting. Yes. And I think that is a big key for the in-law relationship is acceptance, communication and acceptance. want to talk a little bit starting out, like just understanding the dynamic of the in-law relationships, right? So it starts out because you have these two separate different families. These kids are getting raised different ways. And then they get together, right? So then you're kind of, some might be oil, some might be water, and then you try to blend the two and it doesn't really mesh together. I know one thing that my oldest son and daughter-in-law experienced as they were dating and kind of going to each other's houses is I was a little bit of a health nut at our house, and so he would go to her house for dinner, and they'd eat dinner, and then her dad said, "Well, Andrew, what do you want for dessert?" And he's like, "Well, you mean we get dessert? Is it a special occasion? Is it fruit?" and, and he was like so excited. He's like, "No, we don't do dessert at our house unless it's like something, a special occasion to celebrate or whatever." Meanwhile, she comes over to our house, and I'm like, "Hey, what do you like to eat and whatever?" And Andrew said, "Well, Mom, she doesn't eat vegetables." I'm like, "Oh, honey, you're going to be so hungry here. Let me see what else I got, right?" But then she opened up and learned that she actually liked some different vegetables that she'd never tried before, because that just wasn't her. Not that one is good or one is bad, it just wasn't their way of doing one simple thing, which was dinner. Now, if you can take dinner, and dinners can be completely separate, think about the entire rest of your lives. Everything was different. You have different communication styles that were modeled for you. You have different parenting styles that were used across the board. So I think just understanding that from the get-go, that you're taking two things that were completely separate before, and you're merging them together, right? Um, and that's the starting place that you have to start to work on building the relationships and everything. So, and like I said, one of the things, expectations. Um, I think sometimes as mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws as well, when we get newly married, we have expectations, right? As a new daughter-in-law, I expected that I was like, and I'm very independent. I am very driven. I'm like, have my own thing going on. I don't really need advice from anybody. I was,
Mm-hmm.
17, 18, and 20 when we had our first son. Why would I need advice from anybody? I'm perfectly capable, right? I don't need wisdom from anybody. How dumb was that? Right? I could have saved myself a lot of heartache. Um, but that expectation that I was just going to be in this little bubble and have my own thing kind of would butt up against, a mother-in-law's expectation of, "Hey, you're now part of our family, and this is how we do things. And hey, here's how we do Christmas. Here's how, now fortunately my mother-in-law she was so super gracious. Um, Loved her to death. Definitely had faults, but the way she treated me was never one of them. Um, so I just want to turn that, Kathy and Carrie, what expectations did you find yourself having as a new wife, and then also as a new mother-in-law? Either maybe spoken or unspoken.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy or Carrie.
Yeah, so I had a similar story to you with my first mother-in-law, Kurt's mom and parents. So here he is married, he grew up Southern Baptist, super conservative, and he's marrying this wild girl from Colorado and bringing a 2-year-old with her. So they were amazing. They wrapped their arms around both of us as if we had always been part of the family and just accepted Taylor into the tribe as if he had always been there. It was such an amazing act of love that I had never experienced before. And so that's something that I've just always remembered and wanted to kind of be like, and how that felt. Like, man, and I was similar to you. I'm like, this food that you're eating here, Southern food, like, I'm not, man, I was just kind of snotty a little bit, but they just still showed me such grace in that difference and allowed me to grow myself and to mature. And that's just something that I've always kind of remembered
Kathy,
of how they.
Carrie, I want to pause right there for a second, because I love what you said about that, about they allowed you grace so you could grow. And
Mm-hmm.
I think if we have the older generation, the mother-in-laws listening to that, that is so key in keeping that bridge attached for our relationship with our daughter-in-laws. Give them grace. They are still growing. They don't know everything that we know. They haven't lived what we've lived, right? I mean,
Right.
yeah, go ahead, continue.
No, go ahead, Kath.
Kath, what you got? What were
I
some of
mean,
your
I don't
expectations?
know. Those are so good. Got married and we moved away to Texas. So I was far from everyone. So I did not have many expectations. John's mom was a single mom. I had heard stories. And that's the other thing we have to take into account. The sons tell stories and set the stage sometime for the
Mhm.
mothers in law that, you don't know that that's fact. I mean, it's their perception of what happened. And so, but that also sometimes kind of sets your opinions.
Mm.
And so, I mean, I didn't have a lot of expectations. Like you, Alicia, I was very independent, knew what I wanted. I was going after it. I really didn't need a lot of people to give me advice. So that is not the kind of relationship I ended up having with her. And it was fine. I mean, but it wasn't one where she came in and tried to take over or I pushed her back. It was more non-existent, to be honest.
Mhm.
Mm.
Do you wish that with that being you're young, you have this new mother-in-law, is that kind of what you thought it would be like to have a mother-in-law? Like, did
I
you have
don't
any
think I,
ideas about that or not
No,
really?
I don't think I did. I mean, it was fine. She was definitely just like a friend. I mean, and always, I mean, we got along fine. I don't remember other than, little things of, her feeding my kids their first food when I didn't know and things like that.
Yeah, right.
It was fine. She was very young when she had John. I think she was 17 as well. So she wasn't
Mhm.
that much older and, came around more like a big sister, if you will, than
Mm.
a mom kind of role. And so, no, I don't remember having any disappointments of expectations of how it would be. It just was what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
That's good.
I like that actually.
Yeah.
Um, kind of that big sister role. Um, so dynamics, right? Talk about expectations being raised differently, and that's, honestly, that's not even including cultural
Yeah.
differences. Our youngest son, uh, his wife is Latina. Her family is very
Yes.
different from ours. They do what we would consider like some crazy things. I mean, they stay up late to celebrate and party to like the kids all stay up and I'm just kind of going like, don't they need to go to bed? They need so many hours of sleep, and the younger they are, the more sleep they need. And why are they eating cake and all that sugar? And kind of like those are kind of the things that go through my head. But that's how she grew up. Like that's what she knows. That's what's comfortable for her. So they've kind of had to find a boundary, like a middle ground in there of what works for both of them. The other thing that really kind of affects the dynamics of the relationship is roles and boundaries. And I think that is also something that gets blurred. And if you were listening last week, we talked about the importance of having conversation early
Excuse me.
so
Mm.
that you don't get like 5 years into this relationship and you're like, ugh, oh yeah, my mother-in-law's coming over and I'm going to see if my friends will call me and whatever. I got 3 bottles of
Mm-hmm.
wine, whatever that might be, right? Talk about this early. There are different roles and boundaries with that. In my
Yeah.
opinion, what I try to do, and I love the idea of the role of the big sister. Um, with that kind of like a motherly big sister, right? You still love them, you want to care for them. Maybe you can't talk to them quite like a sister. I'm an only child, so I don't really know how that works, but I see sisters and I'm kind of like, oh, you can say that to her. Maybe not quite like that, but I want to be a cheerleader and a sounding board for them, kind of an open, hey, I'm
Yeah.
here, I am in your corner. And I think it's really important also not to just be in their corner of the daughter-in-law or the in-law, but to see that couple as a unit.
Mm.
So
Absolutely.
I always try to think like, okay, I'm not like pro Andrew or pro Essa, right? I am pro, the kids made this name up for them, Andressa. That's their couple name. I'm pro
That's funny.
Andressa. So whatever is going to be good for them as a couple, not necessarily good for Andrew as my son and Essa as my daughter-in-law. Um, that's what I want to support and do, and just to cheer them on and kind of be available as a sounding board if they would like it. Which sound you listen to, you don't speak, as y'all know me. That's my biggest problem, is trying to keep my mouth shut when I'm thinking things. Still working on. But yeah, how Kathy, how would you define roles of in-laws with what you've got going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think again, it starts with your own attitude, especially a son. I do have some daughters, but I have mainly sons, so I have a lot of daughter-in-laws, and I think it starts with the attitude of they're not taking your son away. I hear so many women say, "My son and I were so close until that woman took him away." Like that is
Mhm.
so freaking childish. Grow up. I mean, that's the whole point of raising kids is so they would go away. I mean, nobody wants a 40-year-old sitting on his mama's lap. I mean, what are you even saying? Instead, bring that daughter in law in. And your role, just like you said, is to be support and cheerleader. He picked her. So we should be so proud. And if we initially don't have anything we love about her, then we need to find something that we like
Mm,
about her. Right? We don't have to be best friends with her. I have different levels of relationships with my daughter-in-laws, closer to some than the others, but I'm trying to get to know them all as individuals. So I think if you start there, and then remember, you are not their teacher. You're not their mom, so you don't need to mother them. Now, I have some daughters-in-law that want me to mother them. And if they do, then girl, I'll mother you all day long. But that's if invited in to do that role. If not, then you back it on up and be that support. And don't overstep that and don't give your opinion to your son. And like you said, don't try to divide. You need to be pro the couple. Don't try to divide on one side or the other. So
yeah.
you said it all. I just agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely something because we have a non-traditional family. I was a single parent and then, later on brought in stepdaughters too and a stepson. So it's just a different way of handling those successions of things that we think should go in a certain way. So Taylor and Kayla actually got married a year before Andy and I did. And so just being in the trenches together, and I think I've mentioned this before, as a family, like our relationships were different. Taylor's relationship with the boys and Carly and me were different. And so, he got married at 20 and it was just hard for our family to adjust to that. And so I feel like paying attention to those growing pains, that the
Mm,
family dynamic is changing and will never go back to the way it was. And my mentality was, and this was not right, was that you're coming in here, we got this nucleus and this is how we operate and you're a welcome part of that. Well, no, no, no. This is never, it's not going to be that way again. And so there's growing pains there every time a new person comes into the families. Just giving ourselves time to feel that, to grieve that, and also to celebrate that of what's to come because it is not easy as moms. We're like, this is my crew. I got you guys. We're all here together. And then here comes this other person with her own, like you said, Alicia, like we're coming from two different places. I raised my kids in a totally different way than how she was raised, or Scarlett, or, my stepdaughters. And it's just different. So as moms, to feel that grief a little bit and that change, as well as celebrating what is
mm.
new to come. And so I feel like we need to maybe pay attention to that a little bit more. It's not easy. And as moms, we can grieve that. It's okay. And we're not a bad person.
That's
It's
so good,
okay.
Carrie. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when I hear you say that, like my heart almost kind of sinks a little bit. But it's true. It's never going to go back to the way that it was. It's not.
Yeah.
That time
Yeah.
has gone. Um, but that, I think
Mm,
that probably does require some grieving on a healthy level of,
Hmm.
okay, this is like that time has passed. That part of my life is over. But then also, I love that you mentioned celebrating things that are to come. It
Yeah.
might not ever look the same, but hopefully it can look different in a really good way. I mean, I know now we have two of our boys have kids. One of them does not, is still single. And he loves to hang, he loves to be the Uncle Hunter that comes in
Mm.
takes everybody fishing and plays with them, and
Yeah.
he loves that. That's not ever something that we had before. That's a new thing. So there are definitely good things that could come out of that.
Yeah, and
Uh,
actually, if I can just say, like bringing in those new people who come with their own opinions and thoughts and spice of life and, sense of adventure or whatever it is they're bringing, is making the family just this better, bigger, beautiful picture of, togetherness. And so that's been really fun to see these daughter-in-law, my two daughter-in-laws come in, and then Benjo coming in has just been like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, I didn't know I could love even more than I already do. And they're just bringing so much difference but beauty to the
Mm,
family. So that's a cool way to think about when our kids find somebody else, is that we get to experience this whole new human being. And it's such an amazing, I think, gift that we get, and also a
yes.
responsibility to love them well.
yeah,
So
yeah, for
good.
sure. And of course, the second part of that with the roles is boundaries, right? I think it's super important to respect the personal space of that younger couple, the daughter-in-law, right? Um, Hence the pop in. I don't know about you guys. We live far enough away, so I never experienced the pop in with in laws coming in, but I hear about that a lot from some of my younger friends where their parents, because they live close, and what a blessing it is to live close, especially once you have grandchildren, but they will just kind of like, oh, we were in the neighborhood, so we thought we'd just pop in. Um,
No,
I would be on edge.
no, I don't know.
I don't know.
No.
Like for me, I'm kind of like, I don't know if I would have liked that or not. I grew up in a setting on my dad's side where the pop-in was a regular thing. They grew up as a family. My grandpa had a family of 8 kids, and they all were kind of in the same area in Chicago in this Czech bohemian neighborhood. And so like they would walk places. They didn't have 2 cars. One person had a car, they shared. And so like they'd go out and take their kids for walks. And when I got to go visit, like we would go pop in on all sorts of people, and it
Wow.
was welcomed, but it was also expected. I think the problem becomes for my younger friends is when the pop in is unexpected. Like that's not how they do life, right? And I know once you start having kids, you have so much more going on than just whatever your agenda is, right?
Yeah.
um
I kind of wish our culture was still like that in a way. I wish that it was like that, because that was a cultural thing where you just walk
Yeah.
down to your neighbor's house and you knock on
yeah,
the door, and then you sit down and you talk together. I wish that we could still do that, but that is just not the
that's
way it
not
is anymore.
right.
And like you
Yeah.
said, those mamas, they got their day planned, and nap is here and mealtime's here, and if you it just throws it all.
I
So,
remember I had not been married very long. We lived in a small apartment. We'd had a fire and had to move to this apartment. We worked full time. I still remember it so clearly. It was the weekend. I had done so much laundry and literally pulled all the laundry on the sofa, like probably 3 loads of laundry on the sofa for me to fold. And all of a sudden, there's a knock at the door. And it was John's grandfather and uncle. They were going to a Georgia game and they popped in. I was horrified because here, all I'm thinking of, they are going to judge me so harshly because there's all this
oh,
laundry all over the sofa. I could not enjoy the time with them because I was so stressed out, moving laundry over so they could sit down. I mean, I mean, it's so impactful. So I would have hated the drop in. I mean, now I'm okay with it. Now I'm like, cool. I don't have
Yeah,
laundry sitting on my sofa though. I'm not in the
yeah.
middle of, all that. I could put my laundry away. But as I say that, I
yeah.
think laundry's on my bed. But anyway,
So
yeah.
I would love to give the younger moms some tools. Somebody
Okay.
pops in on you. Somebody pops in on you. Mother-in-law pops in because like maybe she wants to see the grandbaby. Maybe the grandbaby's napping. Now you have this tension. Or maybe the grandbaby's not napping, and you're just like you can't do that right now. Your time, your schedule is just not allowing that with everything you have going on. What can she say? What can she do to respect that mother-in-law and still set that boundary and get across that
Mm.
this is really not a good time? Kathy, what you got
Cool.
for that? You're always good with the answers for stuff like that. Of like,
But I think it's so
maybe should have told.
hard. Yeah, but are you going to say that? I mean, you're thinking that, but are you
Well,
going to
I'm thinking
say
that's what I'm
that?
saying. That's what I'm asking you. because
Yeah.
that's what I would say.
I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, what I would probably do if it were me in that situation, I would invite them in. I would suck it up for that visit. But after that
Mm,
visit is over, I would say, "Hey, I love to see you, but here's our schedule. And so if you're going to pop in, know that nap time is here." Or even better, if you don't mind just shooting me a text, if we can just have the kind of relationship that I feel the freedom to say this isn't a great time. I mean, definitely want to see you. I will suggest a different time, but I am working hard on naps right now and I am at my wit's end. And maybe then the mother-in-law will say, well, let me come plan and sit with her and nap and you go have a break. That's what you could do then.
Yes.
yeah.
Or,
There's a
but
way to
if
show
the,
up.
right, but also if the mother-in-law wants to see her, like if my grandbaby were asleep, I would so just spend the time with my daughter-in-law and say, well, do you have time for a cup of coffee? I'd love
Yeah.
to catch up and see how you're doing. So I
Yeah.
think there's lots of different ways you can handle it. But as the daughter-in-law, I can tell you there's no way I would have been able to say, I'm so sorry. Now is not a good time. Now, I have a feeling that our little generation now would be able to do that because I know my
Yeah.
kids would be able to do that. My kids would be able to say,
Yeah.
"I'm so sorry, this doesn't work for me. Peace out." I
Yeah.
love that. Some people
Yeah.
think that's kind of harsh this generation. I think it's fabulous because I think they have healthier boundaries. So
Yeah.
if you can do that, then do that kindly though. Don't be a bitch about it. Be kind and say, "Hey, this doesn't, I would love to see you, but I just put the baby down and I need 15 minutes myself." And then you, as the mom or mother in law, say, "You got it. Is there anything I can do? Because I'm in the area. Can I run an errand for you? Is there any
Hmm.
way I can help you while
Yeah.
I'm right
Perfect.
here?"
Yeah.
Yep.
Don't make it about you. Not about
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely like no emotional blackmail. Oh, well, I drove all
Right.
the way over here.
Oh,
I was really
Yeah.
guilt
glad to
shaming.
see him.
Yes,
Can I
really.
just smell
Uh-huh.
his
Can I
head? I
just
mean,
peek
Right.
at him and rub
Yep.
him and tell him
yeah.
Nana loves him and accidentally wake him
Yes.
up? Yeah. No.
Yeah, and the thing about boundaries is that
Oopsie.
Yeah.
it's to help, the boundaries are there to help the relationship. It's not to be a
Yes.
jerk and to say, I don't want you around. It's to bring that relationship within the boundaries so that it can be healthy within this certain realm,
Yes.
within this
Yes.
way. So I think sometimes you gotta, like,
Yep.
anyway, that was really good, Kath.
And with that, I am going to segue right into the second part of how can we build the positive relationships with those in-laws, right? Effect again, I think it comes down to effective communication is key. Keeping your expectations out of it and then effectively communicating in a respectful way, right? Um, what was your communication like with your mother-in-law, Carrie, with Kurt?
With Kurt's mom, she was just the fun, funny, joking all the time. So we didn't really have any conversations like that. I would just endure. I mean, she was great. They would eat all the things, wear them out. Oh man, it was took probably a week or two to get them back when I did get them back home, and that was hard. So I didn't know boundaries. I didn't know if this was okay or not or how it was supposed to be. I just loved that she was loving on my kids and
Mm,
spending time with them. And it gave me a time to go take a nap or whatever. So we didn't, we didn't have conversations like that. We probably should have. The relationship could have gone, but also,
Yeah,
you were just talking about the daughter-in-law to have those conversations. It's up to the grandparent or the mother-in-law of how they're going to respond. So
absolutely.
we say, I didn't know to tell her anything, but then it's up to her to how she's going to respond to it.
right.
Yeah, I
And I think
agree.
boundaries can go both ways. Let's don't forget it is okay for grandparents to set some boundaries too. I mean, I think kids can guilt us into things. It can go both ways. So it is okay to say, I am so sorry. I
Mm,
cannot watch your kids this weekend.
yeah.
We have something planned and not feel bad about it. Well, yeah, I know you wanted to see them. I know you wanted to,
Yeah.
I do want to see them, but this weekend is already planned and I'm so sorry. I am available this weekend. So it is okay to negotiate those things and do it in a healthy way. But I think guilt is so often used in relationships, really close relationships
Yes.
like this on both sides, Be careful with that. Be careful using guilt as your method to get what you think you want.
Yep.
Yeah, and almost kind of on the flip side of that, my youngest daughter-in-law, she's, she's working full time. She's going to school. They have a 2.5-year-old. Now they have a newborn that I think he's, maybe 6 months or so. Um, she almost feels like she can't, like she's afraid to ask me on the flip side of that because she's
Mm,
like, she's so busy and I don't want to, she doesn't want to impose. And I
mm,
think
Right, right.
daughter-in-law sometimes feels like, yeah, I don't want to impose on your parents. Um, and I think like for them, I always try to just reinforce, listen, ask me as many times as you want because I feel the freedom to say no when I need to.
Perfect. Yeah,
yeah.
So
yeah.
just know,
Yeah.
like, I am not going to feel guilty about saying no. I feel we will take them whenever we can, and we love taking them, love it. But if I cannot, or we have something else scheduled, I'm happy to plan another time. Or maybe I'm just too exhausted. Maybe we had like something going on, or I was out of town for a long time and I come back and like, I know I'm just going to be in a half days. Like today is like not a good day. But let's talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be rested
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good, Alicia. Yeah.
um, I think one thing that, and I mentioned this at the podcast last week, as far as communication with the mother-in-law to the daughter-in-law, right? Instead of just vomiting that information that we think they need to know, which they receive as, oh, you think I suck at this and I'm doing a bad job. And so now, Kathy, what you were saying, that fear of being judged with all the clothes in the house, now that's coming to fruition. And they're actually thinking, yeah, they're judging me and they think I'm bad at it. And that is never good
Mm-hmm.
for relationships. So,
Right.
um, are you open to some feedback? If you see them struggling, I think that's totally fair to say, hey, I noticed that this was kind of a struggle. Are you open to some feedback? If they
And
say yes,
what if they say no? No,
um,
I'm not open to feedback.
okay. If you're not open to like that's totally okay. And I almost kind of preface it like that. Like, listen, are you open to feedback? If not, it's okay. I'm
Right.
seeing some things here that I don't know if you're seeing those or not. I just thought I would share if you're open. If you're not open, then yeah, let's just move on.
Move on. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Pass, pass the water.
And we have to let it go.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
they're not, we don't then go gripe about it to whoever. Gosh, can you believe my daughter-in-law? I tried to give her
Yeah.
feedback because I know better and she didn't take it. Guys, they're still learning. I
Yeah.
love what you had said earlier, Carrie, about the grace to grow. I just
Mhm.
keep thinking about that because that's hard because I'm a fixer and I'm thinking, girl, I can fix that in
Me
5 minutes or less. But give them grace to grow through it themselves. It's their journey. If they want us
Yeah.
involved, we'll jump in. But if not, not only back up, just back up in your attitude about it too. Because sometimes I can get a little attitude about if they weren't open to feedback. I'd be like, all right, well, your
Yeah.
loss, but
See how that goes down.
right, yeah,
See how
yeah,
that
can't
works
wait
out
to
for you.
come
Yeah.
back a week and tell me how that went. None of that. Just truly Elsa it and let it go. Just do that. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a lot of this comes back to us as human beings and individuals rather
Yeah.
than being a mom and a mother-in-law. Like, what are we doing to be
yes,
fulfilled ourselves
yes,
and be
yes.
individuals? Are we getting out there? Are we having some fun? Are we getting connected with our own community? Are we learning new things or whatever? So that we're not so dang focused on our kids anymore. Like, we don't have to
Yes.
be that anymore. It's not about
Right.
us anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
good.
I think another thing about the communication piece is that in order for that to work, it has to be open and honest. And as we've talked about before, sometimes that's not always easy to have open, honest communication if there is a riff or something that's not gelling, where that oil and water is kind of coming together. Uh, and again, if you don't talk about it, then you're going to end up separating the relationship by means of not talking about it, because that's always going to kind of
Hmm.
be in the middle. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
um, being open and honest, giving some tools, kind of go tos. Um, when you know it's hard, you really should have that conversation. Um, I'm going to add a couple things and maybe y'all can add a couple to that too. But for one, like never in the heat of the moment. Like you two are kind of back and forth, let it settle, come back to it. Um,
Yeah.
Wait a while, maybe get some feedback from your spouse if you have a spouse or a good friend. And when I say that, back Kathy, back to you saying like, well, oh, so and so, you can't believe that. In a spirit of, hey, this is what happened. Um, can you give me some feedback on how you see this, how I can build a relationship, right? I think when you talk to people about whatever went on, it should always be with the motivation of, hey, can you speak some truth into my life and help me with this? It's not
Mm-hmm.
broadcasting on Facebook. It's not,
Right.
or Instagram if you want your daughter-in-law to know about it. It's it's more about the motive for the relationship. Um, and then go privately to them and talk, right? Not like in the middle of family dinner where, hey, well, I noticed that you said this
Yeah.
about me and we talk about this right now. Any good little nuggets that you guys have for mother-in-laws or daughter-in-laws?
Ooh. Yeah, I would recommend just inviting them out to lunch or breakfast, just breaking bread together,
Ooh,
being
that's
across the
good.
table, and
Yep.
it's not so formal or official, and it's not in anybody's home or anything like that, and just opening, sometimes we tend to be more open to conversations like that when we're eating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that I think that I've done that once or twice, and just it was just such in a relaxed environment just to go, hey, can you tell me, is there anything that I've done or said, or your perspective on this situation, whatever it is. So taking them out to breakfast or lunch or dinner or something like that.
Yeah, and mother-in-laws, by the way, if you do this and you ask that question, is there anything that I've done to offend you or things that I've said? And they pause, the answer is yes, you have.
Yeah.
Let the
Open that
pause
door
sit there.
wide for
Just
them.
let it be.
Yeah, open that wide so they can tell you about it and be open to
Yeah.
receiving that. Do not get defensive and tell them why you did that. Okay, because that's just telling them, well, I know I did that, but this is the really good reason why. And
Your
too bad.
feelings aren't valid.
Correct. Your feelings aren't valid.
And I
Um,
would also say that, if you aren't comfortable having a conversation, don't be afraid to write a letter. I don't
Mm,
think my kids would mind me sharing. I know they wouldn't mind. They've all given me permission to share. But one time, uh, a child said something, and Jeff responded in some frustration, which is super unusual. If you know Jeff, Jeff is like the kindest soul,
mm,
rarely responds, in anything other than kindness. And it was just kind of short. So he took the time to write my child a letter and explain. He was reacting. It's hard to. I'm trying not to give so many details because their story. But anyway, it was a son who had said something out of anger. He had gotten angry. Jeff responded. Jeff wrote him a letter and said, listen, this is why this hurts me so much, is because I had a stepfather and anger was his first response to everything. And he took that anger out on me. And so when I hear someone get angry, I immediately just kind of get all nervous. And so I responded back, just almost going back to being a young boy. It was so
mm.
powerful to
Wow.
help Henry understand the why behind it. And so
Yeah.
sometimes if we're uncomfortable verbalizing, if we are better at writing it, sit down and write a
yeah.
letter. And sometimes you don't even need to give them the letter. You just writing the letter makes
Yeah.
it better. But if you
Yeah.
do need to give them the letter, maybe you end it with, hey, I would love to talk about this in person if you want to, if you're comfortable with that. But there are lots of ways you can do it. And I think also if you are going to, go out, be careful going out. I mean, I think it's a great idea to go out to lunch, but maybe just start with some curiosity. And instead of jumping right in, hey, is there anything I've offended? Maybe you start off with, you know what I've realized? I just don't know you as well as I want to know you. And
Mm-hmm.
I would love for you to tell me, what led you to feeling this way about a subject? What is your thought process behind XYZ, and get to know their story a little better. Because often when we hear things from the other side, we're like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now I see where you're coming from. Now I see how you got to this place. So do some digging Be willing to
Mhm.
do some digging, and then also ask, hey, do you want to hear a little of my story? You might not know, for example, you might not know my story of what happened to me as a child, um, being molested. And this is why I freak out over this subject, because this happened to me. And so I freak out when someone says this, whatever
Yeah.
the story is. And they're like, oh, I had no idea. So anyway,
Yeah.
those are just some things I would say. Get curious,
Yeah.
dare to write a
Absolutely.
letter, ask a lot of questions, get to know their full story. I think all of that
Hmm.
is helpful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if being across the table from somebody is too intimidating, because sometimes that is for me, just go for a walk.
Hmm.
You're side by
Ah,
side. You're not,
a
just take a
walk is
walk with
great.
somebody. Yeah.
Yes, yes, so
Yeah.
good.
Well, again, that segues right into how we can start to build those positive relationships, right? We've got the
Mm,
communication, it's open and
yeah.
honest. We want that to be going on. And I would kind of tag the mother in laws for this, but daughter in laws, like, I mean, it could be open for you too. But yeah, get to know your in laws. Uh, one thing when I was, where we go to church. I was a middle school girls group leader. Uh, had this group of girls for 3 years, and one of the goals was they call it time on their turf. Right? Don't expect them to come do the things that you want to do. Go to their turf. Go to their game. Go do if they like to hike. Go hike. If they like to go to a dance recital, go to their dance recital. Right? So um, try to find some time on your daughter-in-law's turf. What is their turf? My daughter-in-laws and I are, we have some similarities, but we're very different. Um, for me, we would go in a boat, we would go fishing, I would go in the ocean, I would go
Go
underwater,
CrossFit.
I would go
That's right.
hiking, I would like fly out of airplanes. They're like,
Jump off rocks.
Yeah.
go to lunch. We really
Yeah.
like to go to lunch. They never take us to lunch, right? So learn about them is my point. Figure out what they like to do and go do that. Do you guys have any ideas
I
for
don't know
those?
if this was you or your idea, Alicia, but it was send them the love language test and take the
Yes.
love languages and find out what their love language is. I thought that is such a great idea.
Yep. Yep. Um, Go ahead, Kathy.
I
Or
was
you
just
want to?
say, just remembering the little things. Like, I have a daughter-in-law that I'm specifically trying to build a relationship right now because I don't know her very well, and we naturally don't have a lot of things in common. And she mentioned this particular shop that she enjoys, and that she wanted to learn glass blowing and some things like that. She loves, glass. She loves hand blown glass, and I thought, okay, put a note in my phone to remember if I come across that, if I see a class, be intentional about things she's mentioned, and trying to get to know her, notice what's important to them. And I know we've said that, but it goes flip. When she and my son came to visit recently, this is such a little thing, but it meant the world. I love, one of my favorite things on the planet is lemon stuffed olives. You can't find them very often. I love a
Yeah.
lemon stuffed olive. And my daughter-in-law walked in with this little bag. She goes, oh my gosh, we were at the store and we saw these lemon stuffed olives. And last time we were here, you mentioned loving them and I got them for you. And I was like, wait a
Wow.
minute, this is what I'm supposed to do. And you did this.
Yeah.
And it's a daughter-in-law that, again, she's a newer daughter-in-law. I don't know her very well. I was so touched by that. And that
Yeah.
meant the world to me. So I'm thinking, okay, you got to in turn do that for them. So I think those are great ways.
Yes.
I mean, just
Yes.
what you girls have said it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, Eddie, and so again, another way that you can build that relationship is showing appreciation and respect. Bring your
Mm.
mother-in-law something that she like. So for me, I love a good hug. I'm a physical touch person. I'm physical touch and um, quality time. So I want to spend time with you. I want to hang out. I'm going to be like, oh my goodness, how are you? Give you a big hug. Not everybody's like that. I have some kids that are not like that, but they know that I love that. And so they will come give me a hug, even though that's not their thing because they
Yes.
know I love
Yeah.
them. I love to hear from my daughter-in-laws, I love you. I love to hear
Mm.
thank you from them. It's so amazing to me how good that sounds coming from
Yes.
them,
Yeah.
right? That it just feels like you get a little bit of gratitude. What about you guys? The respect goes both ways. What kind of things how do you feel appreciated? Kathy, I know you said the lemon stuffed olives.
Always lemon stuffed olives. No, no, no. And I mean, yeah, I think the respect is huge. Or I do think it's a compliment when they ask you for advice. I think when
Yeah.
they say, "Hey, what are your thoughts on this? I'm struggling here. I'd love to hear what you have to say." To me, that's always touching when they want to hear what I have to
Mhm.
say about something.
Absolutely. Yeah, Carly will bring up. And it's interesting to know what our kids remember about us and their own
Mm,
childhood.
yes.
And it's like, oh, you saw that as a good thing. And it warms my heart that that was a good thing that we all read together at night in bed. And
Yes.
even though it was chaotic, just when they bring up those sweet memories of their own childhood and things that we did as a family that they want to carry on, it's
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, that means so much. So
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great. Sorry, moving my camera. That's a great perspective. That just because we remembered it one way doesn't mean that they actually remembered it the same way. And
Hmm.
that can go
Yeah.
both ways too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, our mom would be like,
Right.
"Oh, mom, remember when you were chasing me
Yeah.
around the table?" And like, oh, yeah, no, I remember that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I think we are about to wrap up here. Um, so much more we could talk about with this, and even dig in with, navigating the challenges with the in-laws. But I think like our two key takeaways from this is open and honest communication,
Yeah.
lower or eliminate your expectations. Expectations are
Ruin relationships.
ruin relationships. That's what I was
Yep.
looking for. Expectations ruin relationships.
Yeah.
And then respect, build with what you got, even if it's just a little bit.
And it's not, oh, sorry.
No, well, I was just gonna say, I know, and in my opinion, it's the mother-in-law. It's our responsibility to really build and grow that relationship with them, right? But that doesn't mean that as a daughter-in-law, you can't be like, okay, I have a really crappy relationship with my mother-in-law. I'm gonna be the one to reach out. I'm gonna text her and tell her I'm thinking about her and having a good day, right? Because in the
Yeah.
end, if your relationship mends and heals, that benefits everyone,
Yeah,
Yep.
for
right?
sure.
That open dialogue. Carrie, what were you gonna say about that?
I was going to say, I think it's number 4, but it's not about us.
Yes.
Yes.
Not about us.
Yeah.
Not about us.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So I just want to encourage y'all to take these strategies, implement what you can. We're all about small deposits for building relationships here. So I challenge you to make one small deposit for an in law in your family and let us know what it is, right?
Yeah.
Or if you have
Yes.
questions, you want to share your experiences with your mother in laws, um, mothers in law.
I know.
Uh,
Grammatically
We'll get
so
it.
I
difficult.
know, right?
Mothers
Some
in
We'll
people
law.
get
just
it.
that. Everybody
Yeah.
says it wrong anyway. If you have
Yep.
questions for future episodes, we would love to connect with you guys on that basis.
Yep.
And then lastly, uh, y'all, and I know you know this, Thanksgiving is coming up soon. I think we have maybe like a week and a half before Thanksgiving. Do not miss next week's episode. Carrie is
Yes.
going to be taking us through guilt-free festive frenzy.
Ooh.
Whew,
So all
it's going
that
to be a
guilt
good
that you're
one.
wondering, are they
Yeah.
judging me? Did I make it right? Did
Right.
whose brother-in-law is at the table that we don't want him to come, and all
Mm.
those sorts of things. Don't miss next week. Thank you guys for
Excuse
tuning in
me.
and listening.
Yes.
And uh,
Yep.
we're all still
Bye. Yeah,
yeah.
we're all still
Bye.
Y'all have
learning.
a great day.